In this video, we are going to discuss about the common types of errors that occur in JavaScript and how to resolve them. Let's start. I've added or listed common type of errors in the JavaScript, which are syntax error, undefined variables, incorrect function parameters, type errors, null or undefined object, infinite loop, asynchronous code, unhandled promises, variable scopes, browser compatibility. If you remember from our previous I have a tutorial on this advice API tutorial in which we made this a small application in which we made a request to an API to get some random advice and show it on the screen. I'll try to cover almost all of the errors in this example, but even before that, I will try to explain all of the errors one by one separately. So this was the HTML markup, HTML CSS web page. And then let's start from syntax error. So if I make in a variable let my var equal 5, there is no syntax issue. But if I say something like, if I do something like this, now this is a syntax issue. Like I'm not following the exact, I'm trying to do this plus instead of equal. So this means there is a syntax issue. Or if I am making a function and instead of naming a function, I do like this. So this is again a syntax issue. This shouldn't be a syntax issue, but there should be, let's put it in the name, my func. If I remove this bracket, that means missing up a bracket, and this is gonna be a syntax issue as well. Okay. Next is gonna be undefined variables. So let's say like I do not even have a variable and I'm trying to access it in the console log, and I'm trying to access a variable named my var, which I haven't defined anywhere. So this is gonna be undefined variable, and you see that in the browser as my var is not defined. So a reference error. Next is going to be function parameters. So passing in the wrong, you have a function my var, and it accepts a x, and it was supposed to do is multiply this x with the 2 and return that. But I was supposed to pass, assuming I was supposed to pass in this function 5, but I pass in 10. This is like a wrong thing that I'm passing into this function. So that could be one error as well. So we need to be careful about the function parameters as well. Next is gonna be the type errors. Type error is, let's say like I'm targeting an element, this element header. Let my header equal, I'm targeting that element in my DOM, get element dot query selector. I'm saying header, but instead of saying query selector, currently it is correct, but if I say the query selector, so that means like I've spelled it wrong, and there is no such property query selector rr with the double r in the document. So that is going to be a type error. So it's going to say uncaught type error document is query selector rr is not a function. So be careful of your properties that which you're accessing. Next is going to be null or undefined object. Null is going to be, let's say like there is no property in a variable, let my var equal to null, and we are trying to access this value. We're thinking that there exists a value, so that could be one problem. Or undefined object, that means like in a variable, in an object. This means null or undefined object means I'm trying to access a wrong object again. Like I'm trying to say console log, this is my var, and I have a property a1, and I'm trying to say in here my obj.a, which is actually not there. I have my var.a, so this is gonna be undefined object. Reference error, my obj is not defined. Next is infinite loops. There can be a chance like I'm saying is let I equal, I'm running a loop for infinite number of times, which is I less than, maybe I'm saying is less than, until unless it is greater than 2. So that is gonna run it forever. That means I was supposed to put in I less than 1 here, but I put in greater than here. So that one wrong symbol is gonna make it run forever. So let's see. The initial value should be 2 or greater than 2. Let's start with 3. So now it's just going on, and you can see like if I let it happen, it would crash my browser. If I let it run, it's gonna crash my browser, so I have to stop it. And it is actually my browser is actually crashed now. Okay, here we are back at it. Okay, next is gonna be asynchronous code. We're gonna cover this one, asynchronous code, unhandled promises, in this example, because I'm not gonna make in a new request. It's gonna take some time. Let's move to the variable scopes. Variable scope is, let's say like you have a variable, a global variable with the x2, and then you are making a function, my func, and you are trying to access this x here. If you modify this value of the x here, like x equal 2 or x equal 3, so this will modify the x value here as well. So sometimes you need to modify the global state, but most of the times you will be, if you're inside the function there, you might be using another variable, a local variable x equal to 2, which you will be modifying. Now this will be modifying this local one. So these variable scopes can be issue as well, like you can be confused sometimes. These variable scopes can be confused. This can be issue as well. Next is browser compatibility issue. Browser compatibility issue is like you have used some HTML, CSS, JavaScript code which is not supported by some of the browsers, and it is supported by some of the browsers. And we can confirm like which things can we use in which that will be supported in all the browsers. So before using any property, be careful. You can go to this website to confirm that if I use that specific property, will it be compatible with all the browsers or not. So let's say like I want to check like if WebP image format is supported in all the browsers. I'll click on this and check like if it is supported in all the browsers. Yes, it is in the, right now it's supported in the Chrome, Edge, Safari, but it's not supported in the Internet Explorer. And then apart from that, it's not even supported in this KOS browser as well. So you can check which specific feature, like if you apply that, can be a problem for the older browsers, or even if they are modern browsers, do they support that feature yet or not. So I'm talking about this media range syntax issue. This is even an issue in this latest Safari as well, like 16.3, which was the version released in January 22, 2023. It's an issue on iOS as well. Try to pick up the things which are going to be supported in all the browsers. Okay, let's move on. I have this code. It's eventually going to be almost, I guess, like apart from browser compatibility, it's going to hold in all these issues. So let's try to fix this one by one. If I save it and try to run it in the browser, what I get is the first issue I get is syntax error, unexpected end of input, which is in line 32, and it's telling me the line number. If I click on it, it's going in here, line number 32, uncaught syntax error. The issue is not here. Syntax issue is not actually in here in line number 32. It's going here because missing bracket is somewhere else, but this one is getting inside of that. So it's expecting that In syntax error, we have most oftenly we deal with the brackets issue. So if I keep track of my brackets, so this one is I started this bracket, but I never closed it actually. This is what it is asking me to close it. So if I close it here, and if I see this one, I never closed this one, I opened it. If I close it here, so that's what this is the issue. Okay, so that's what it was asking. The issue is line number 32. Like this was complete, but the syntax issue was coming up from here. There were two brackets that were open, but I never closed them. That issue is fixed, but this is another issue. And also apart from that, these brackets needs to be not closed here, but even though if you close it here, this is gonna remove the syntax issue, but there's a specific reason that I need to close it here for logical purpose, because this is one block of the code, this is one block of the code, so I'll close my brackets here. Moving on to the next error, which is uncaught reference error, random advice button is not defined, which means if you noticed a minute ago, this error comes up if you try to access a variable which is not defined. So what does that mean is we're getting this error in line number 14. This line 14, we are trying to access random advice button. Yep, we are trying to access random advice button, but it is not anywhere. So the problem we can fix is I declared a variable actually inside of that, and I access it before even declaring it. So I need to move this line outside so that my variable is defined, declared, and then I can access it. So that will fix that issue. Okay, let's see in the console. Now it is saying uncaught error, cannot read properties of null add event listener. So it's again, the issue is in line number 14, add event listener. Type errors, if you pay close attention to it, type error comes in when you do not type in all the things properly, like you're trying to access a thing which is not even there. So I'm trying to attach an event listener, a click event listener to this random advice button, and it's saying a type error. So let me see. So if we try to debug it, console log random advice button to see like if it is even there or not. So it is saying null. So we are trying to attach an event listener to a null. So that's where the problem is coming. So I need to now check in my spellings. So I'm trying to access new hyphen advice. I'll go to HTML, and in here, so this is what I'm trying to access, and this is a spelling issue, new hyphen advice, but I'm in here saying S. That is a problem. If I say it, the correct spellings, now it is going to be fixed. That is what the type error is. That error got fixed, but now we from one error to another error, and now what we are encountering is in line number 32, it's saying random advice is not defined. Okay, so in line 32, random advice is not defined comes in again when you are trying to access something which is not there. So again, the issue is this variable or random advice, I'm defining it actually inside of these brackets, which means this is going to be available only inside of the scope of this event listener, and it's not going to be accessible outside of that event listener. To access it outside of that event listener, we have to make it global to access it in throughout the program. So I'll move this also here, and now I hope so that gets fixed. If I go to the console, now it's saying again another issue, type error, document.get element by id is not a function. If I click on this line number 14, okay, so the problem is because id d is going to be lowercase. There is no such property in the document which is id uppercase. Again, I'm trying to access something which is not even there, so I have to put in what id lowercase, d is going to be lowercase. So this issue is going to be fixed. Next is going to be another issue. Okay, so now it is saying in line number 24, I'm trying to access null 404 not found, fetch API URL. Okay, so API URL is actually coming up as null. So I can go to my sources tab. So this is where the function is getting called. I can add in a breakpoint here. I can refresh, and if I look at here, so random advice is getting up as again null. So I have to look up here. So random advice was here, right? So I accessed it and it is again coming up as null. I need to fix that. How can I fix that? Is by I need to look up like why this specific property is coming up as null. I'll go to my this program. So random advice is again there are spelling issues. So random advice, changing it to random advice, and that will fix that issue. Okay, now it is saying get 404 not found. So that means it object only HTML element, which means we are trying to pass in the HTML element object. So it is saying you're passing an HTML paragraph element to this. Okay, so let's see. Random advice. It is because we cannot pass in HTML element and it's trying to fetch some results according to HTML elements, but we need to get the results for this API URL. And again, this is inside of that API, inside the click event. We need to make it global here, and we need to pass in what this API URL actually to the function parameter. And this is the issue of like I was passing in incorrect function parameter. I need to pass in API URL, but I was passing in what random advice. API URL, I'll pass in API URL, that will. So now it is saying API advice 404 on not found, line 25. Let me see. So this is API URL. Let's go inside. API URL is this. Now the server is responding that again that failed to load the response. The server responded with the status of 404. Again, we're trying to access, but we are not getting anything back, and we are not handling that error. So let's try to handle that error. This is gonna fall for unhandled promises. We are not handling the promises. I'm gonna say dot catch. Like if there comes in some error, so you need to add in catch error statement, console log or console.error error. So it's not even going to the catch statement. It's because maybe some issue with the API. So let's copy this endpoint, put it in here. Do we get anything back? Saying 404 not found. There is no such endpoint exists. So let's go to their website. And in here, let's they are saying is advice. Advice is gonna be again spelling issue. ADVICE. So this is what we have to copy, and we'll replace this one. It's gonna be this advice, and that will hopefully correct the issue. Okay, now it is saying reference error advice is not defined, which is in line number 31. Line 31, advice is not defined. Something is not defined means that doesn't exist. So I'm saying random advice is this variable in here. I'm saying not in HTML is going to be advice. It doesn't make any sense because we are getting the data. So first of all, we have to print out the data. We have to look up for the data, that what the data we are getting. So data is this coming up as an object, and to better format it, we can use console.table. In the table, we have slip has two properties. One is ID, one is advice, and we need is data.slip. So first we need to go to slip, then we need to access that advice. So we'll say data in here, data.slip.advice, and here we have correct version of this advice API. If I pass in something like I try to do PS, or do we go into the catch statement, line 25, it's not even able to fetch it. Next is if I click on this button, I get again the same random advice again. I click on edit. So that is how we handle all of the errors. So asynchronous code and promises, this one is a little harder to debug, but with the time you can also get comfortable with it by debugging it more and more. That's it for this video. These were some common issues and how you fix them. I'll see you next time soon. Take care.